Hello? Am I in the right meeting?
Right there.
Hi.
Yes, you are. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
I like your shoes. I don't think I belong to this committee, do I? Listen,
Okay.
I was over this way.
Good evening. It's a call to order of the ad hoc calendar committee meeting. The time is 6:02 PM, July 11th, 2022. Present are committee members Michael Macaron, Erica Castillo, and myself, Joe Lombard, and board members Joseph Sokolovic, John Weldon, and Sybil Allen. There's only one item on the agenda, and that is to have an opportunity just to discuss what was presented to us last week by Rebecca Goldberg and Conrad Belsing. So there's no real particular structure to this, just to have conversation. But kind of a recap, really, there were kind of three possible routes to go down with this endeavor. One is to not create a policy at all and just continue, business as usual. The other was to do the nuclear option, which is to eliminate all religious holidays. We lost Mike. He's back. Mike?
Hello.
Hi. Okay. So I was just saying, I was recapping the basic summary of what was presented to us at the last meeting. And
Okay.
say again, one was to just move forward, business as usual, not create any particular policy around this, addressing adding holidays to the calendar. The other was the nuclear option. Example given was recently Branford School District, which was to eliminate all of the holidays from the calendar altogether. And the other real third viable option was to create a policy that set up some types of guidelines for this and future boards to follow when and if they're approached to potentially add a holiday to the calendar. Did I miss anything?
No, I did this.
Yeah. So
Makes
that was,
sense.
yeah, those are the basic ones. A fourth option was mentioned, but it was even mentioned as not being really viable. So we're not going to go there.
We did approval of minutes.
Oh, my goodness. I'm so bad. I'm going to stop right now.
Yeah.
And ask for motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
So moves.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I'm off today, actually. So yeah. So I know, I remember talking a little bit about no matter which way we go, taking into consideration potential limited number of days that could be available. I know you mentioned something about that.
Right.
Want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the students have to be in school for 180 days. Is that correct? Do you know?
No, 180 or 181? 181.
Yeah.
It's required 180, we do like 182.
Yeah. What was the third option again?
The third option was to create a policy that set out some guidelines around when the board may be approached with a request to add a holiday. So call it parameters, guidelines, whatever it may be.
Right. Which is the option I think I'm most inclined to, option 2, which is to reset and not have any, holidays. For me feels like, us being the most diverse, most colorful district in the state, and our calendar should reflect the same, so we shouldn't have the most generic calendar, of all the districts in the state. I think we should have the most inclusive one. So now I guess the question continues to be is how do we do that without, with consideration for the 180 some odd days that students are mandated to be in class without, overdoing the amount of days that we can possibly give off to celebrate certain occasions. I also recall the attorney mentioning that there was some parameters about whether or not we could, what the causations were for having a day off,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Which were,
Yeah, the lemon test. You want to,
yeah, the human test, that's right.
no, board member Albert Benahan is doing.
So per the lemon test, there was a particular note in here. So just a review for the lemon test, it must have a secular/non-religious legislative purpose. The principal or primary effect of the action must neither advance nor inhibit religion. And the action must not result in an excessive government entanglement with religion. So it seems like all three of these points sort of touch on religion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, this was in reference to that very thing. Religious holidays.
Oh, that's right, that's right. Right, because that was the thing with the lemon test. And then, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well, if that's what the statutes say, I think there's no question that we have to abide by those, right? Don't you think?
Well, it's not a statute. This is like one of the examples that the lawyer had pulled to
Okay.
have something to defer to, right? 'Cause the lemon test is not,
Is it?
I don't think it's law.
It's good.
Well, it is required to follow those three principles. Definitely. And I think, one of the ones about number one, the non-secular purpose, that was a really easy one because it could even just be a district's initiative to promote diversity. It's just that alone could satisfy the secular, non-religious purpose.
Right.
Okay.
And then number three, about excessive entanglement, what was brought up as an example of this is when the government body has to take into account like a lunar calendar or a different calendar that changes every year. And so they're having to make accommodations for that. But that was even deemed acceptable. But that was one of the things, like, for example, with the Jewish holidays, the Muslim holidays. And I think number two was never really a problem about advancing or inhibiting religion. So I think we found that pretty much have a green light to move forward with these requests. I think the bigger issue is what happens when you run out of days to give,
Yeah.
and one thing that was brought up by a couple of board members was it's trying to answer a question that hasn't been asked. It's not currently a problem. And a response to that was, but it may very well become one. So it was worthwhile to have the discussion that we're having right now in the event that we get to the point, which is what I was leading to, which you were talking about, that there's no more days to give. And who do you say no to at that point? And another thing that was brought up, maybe by Mr. Sokolovic, was if you establish parameters, you may find that holidays you've already granted, those groups no longer meet those benchmarks. For example, we talked about numbers and people in the population. It may be that holidays that are long-standing, if we use that set of parameters as a guideline for allowing a new holiday, we might have to take a look at the ones that already exist that may not meet that parameter. Is that about right, what you were saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things to think about.
Okay. Do we have a list of our current holidays, like
Yeah.
handy
Yeah, it's in the first meeting
packet?
packet, yeah.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna pull it up.
It's like the AC's on a strong day. Really? Folder is empty. Can't be right.
I shared your agenda. It's just-
This is for the next meeting. I thought it was in the first year of this.
Oh.
Just was that folder?
Yeah, I think you're right. I did see it today.
Probably, just Google it. right?
Yeah, pull it up.
The, Bridgeport,
It's on the bottom, I think. Yeah, look at the
Oh,
bottom.
on the bottom. Okay. Very good. Joe, you're so good at this stuff.
Can you share that with us, with me? And
Do you-
Albert?
Yeah, if you go to the portal
Yeah.
and go to the calendar committee, it's
Okay.
actually an attachment at the bottom. It's not in the folder itself for the meeting. It's at the bottom.
Okay,
And the calendars are there. There's the school calendar, which is the first one, the horizontal, the landscape. And then there's the Bridgeport Public, there's the city holidays on the bottom. So
okay. So are there any holidays that are on the city council calendar that are not on our calendar?
well, no,
I think it's the other way around.
yeah, we've got I don't know how to say here. You have the Muslim holiday now.
Yep,
And we've switched a couple, so we switched one. So where the city has Veterans Day, we do not. Instead, we have the day after, or the day before Thanksgiving. Yeah, we have the
They
day
get that.
before Thanksgiving. We
Okay,
swapped it.
before, right?
right.
So I mean, I guess I was hoping superintendent would be here for this meeting, but I believe the kind of the question we have is, where are we? Are we maxed out? How many do we have left?
right. How many do we have left? Because I think we could probably proactively look at some holidays.
So for future holidays? to add? Yeah.
Depending on how many days we had. Or we could, again, create some system, for, if there was an overwhelming support for a particular holiday to be observed in this way, what procedure would one need to follow in order to make that happen?
Yeah, and along with that, one of the recommendations or suggestions was looking at attendance records. So I'm going to open up this to conversation to any of the board members that want to just raise your hand and let me know. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. I like the last option. As far as the calendar goes, most years, Juneteenth would be an issue because we're out of school before then, unless there's this year was kind of unusual because there's a lot of snow days.
Yep, right.
So that might be a day to play with every now and then. I mean, especially. And also I'm more for doing nothing at this point, because as you see, when they kind of deflected the lawyers from both CABE and the lawyers when we asked them if they could draft a policy for us, because it's never in most any district. So if any other district hasn't done it, we've had districts that preceded us by years in approving Eid, and I know I can't remember which one it is. One district got Eid and Diwali as holidays as well. And we got to look at, have any of these districts had an influx of people asking and say, ooh, they got the holiday, now we want it? Has this been an issue in any school district? And I don't think, and I think there's a danger in creating a policy to reiterate what you mentioned that I said is about the cutoff. If say, for example, let's use Festivus again. Let's say Festivus has 5% of the city celebrating. So we can't, and it's already a legal holiday in Bridgeport in our public schools. And we see that we can't set the bar below 5%. I mean, above 5%, because that would be unfair, because the people who celebrate Festivus already got it. And demographically, those are going to be the majority of the population, Caucasians, and then the people who are coming are more than likely going to be minority groups, and it's going to impact them. And the minority group is going to come for the holiday And it could perhaps possibly be a cause of action because you gave it to them and they only 5% and they still got it. We got 6%. And that's the trouble. And then we'll get somebody who comes and tests it.
I think that's kind of where the idea of identifying how many actual opportunities there are left. Because you may end up getting someone who's at 6%, but there's no more days to give. You know, and then what? You know, and also where I remember the gentleman from Cape had said, and I'll just remember, I read it again in the minutes or in the minutes of the meeting, was that he was more than happy to write up a policy, but we needed to provide the
parameters.
yeah, the parameters around it. And so they just haven't had the experience doing it and they wouldn't suggest what ours should be.
Right.
You know? Yeah, so.
See, I'm thinking if any policy should be created, that it should just mention all days off must follow, must either meet the lemon test or what was the other thing we were talking about where,
You mean the thing he said he didn't recommend?
no, it must meet the lemon test and satisfy state, we don't even got to talk about religious holidays, it's all holidays and days off must have a secular purpose and not be overly disruptive to the school year. This way it's covered because say 2 or 3 people come to us and then we do in fact run out of days. It's not disruptive when we give it to group A. It's not disruptive when we give it to group B because there's time left in the calendar. But when group C comes, if we're out of days, that will be overly disrupted to the school year.
Mhm.
And that could be used as a reason that we can't look at it right now, if in fact we cannot find another day to accommodate them.
Right.
I mean, we could take a look at days and see maybe there's a day that's not as important, and that's the danger of removing a holiday. I definitely would not advise that unless absolutely necessary. That's why they call it the nuclear option, because nobody wants the nuclear option. But I don't think we'll ever have to see a nuclear option in that. But I think if we stick to like general language, now I'm still for no policy, but if there is a policy, I think it should be relatively broad to give us discretion to approve holidays, not create barriers and just have not disruptive to the school year. And I also, like I said, nobody's gone, this probably wouldn't even be an issue for at least 20 years down the line, because I can only see one up and coming group really so far that could possibly reach out, but I don't see like 100 different changing demographics in the next few years. That's just my take.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Willen, do you have any?
Yeah, so we can give as many holidays as we want. We just have to make sure kids are in school 180 days of the year. We can insert as many holidays such that kids get out of school in the middle of July. You could do that, but you don't want to get to that point. There is currently an issue when we close schools because a lot of our buildings don't have adequate ventilation systems. When you start getting weeks of June, it becomes problematic. We already saw where some schools got closed because it was just too hot. This school year alone, the last day of the school year was June 23rd. I think we need to have some system in place to say that we don't have to worry about it for another 20 years, I think is, putting the onus on somebody else who's going to be sitting in these very chairs and making the decision that much harder for them. I recall people saying that, the Jewish holidays that we have were because of the numbers of Jewish teachers, and the same with the Good Friday. And I always wondered if that was urban legend. Where do you base that on? It always gets said. But I found this.
1952.
This is a Bassick yearbook.
Okay. Yes, it's your book
70 years old.
from
Principal Roth.
1992. Wish? Yeah.
And as you go through, you see a lot of, you know, I'll say ethnic names
Sure.
that you could reasonably infer, here, Bayer, Baker, you know, you could reasonably infer that there was a significant number of people who would take certain religious days off.
Is that when the holiday was?
Oh, I don't know when they did this, but I'm saying if you look back to 70 years ago,
Right.
you can see where, you know, decisions were made based on faculty considerations
Oh, I see.
that we maybe don't have today. Just don't have them. And so that's why I think it's apropos that we're looking at this today, because the considerations they had 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago may be completely different. I mean, I don't see a student of color in this book. I don't see a faculty member of color. It was just a different world, and they had different considerations back then. And now we have our own new considerations 70 years later. It's a whole different world. So I think it's something we really need to be talking and being thoughtful about. I'm sorry he's not here. Apparently he's got a dental appointment.
Okay.
So I think this is something he should be weighing in on.
Mhm.
And I know he's expressed concern for, you know, when we close schools and how late we do, because it gets hot. I don't know what the union thinks about any of this, because it's their teachers who got to show up. I mean, you know, I go to work in an air-conditioned building all year round
Right.
throughout the summer. So here, whatever happens, happens. But I think those are things we need to be considering. Do you get rid of spring break? That's a week. Do you recast it and say, we only observe the federal holidays and we get rid of spring break, or some mix of the two, to see where that brings you? I'm not saying I'm an advocate for one thing or the other, but I do think we need to set some parameters to guide us and people who come after us, so that when the questions come up, they've got something to point to and a tool to use. Because otherwise you do get into a point where, you know, this group wanted their day, that group wanted their day. And, you know, to say that there's no more to give, you've got a whole 180 other more days to give. You got the whole other half of the year that in theory you can give. So I don't know that that would be a reasonable, and what would you base that limit on in terms of how many more days there are available?
A couple things. One thing in the very beginning, Mr. Testani did mention a 5-day buffer at the end before the fiscal year began, and you talked about that too.
Or the what?
That was a change.
I don't remember that part.
Just basically a 5-day buffer. So whatever the 180 days gets pushed out, there's still this buffer. So if there are snow days or something, buffer before, I think it was, I thought it was before the.
They
fiscal
got
year.
the built-in snow, they got built-in snow days every year that we don't use.
Right. You were saying-
No, that's where the 182 days comes from.
Well, I think.
Because there's a couple of days beyond the 180 that you could burn if you really, really had to. If you had a week's worth of snow days, you could say, okay, we're not going to do the last 2 days. And then you're out by the 25th.
And then the only one parameter that was really mentioned was looking at attendance. Any others that people have ideas around?
Well, and there, if you did recast the calendar, you would have an opportunity to monitor what attendance looked like on various holidays that we currently grant. And you could see, even if it was a pilot program, we're going to recast the calendar for 1 year, and we're going to see what the attendance is. What does the attendance look like on Yom Kippur? What does it look like on Rosh Hashanah?
If you say there were no holidays for that year.
If you recast it to be for 1 year as a pilot, to be federal holidays only, and you said, we're going to use that as an opportunity to see what attendance is like without these non-federal,
The temporary,
the temporary
their option.
observation. And you can do that year to year. I mean, so
Benahan, is your hand up? I'm sorry, John.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sir. I have two questions. Why the reason is what is the different about the calendars and the holidays we have years before for now? And second, and I know we talk about everything, and for me it's very important. So we have a survey, go to the staff and go to the parents to think why they think about the holidays, because it's very important, it's part of this, so we deal with parents and staff. So we have a survey that we can send it out, or we did it before, never did it, or something like that. That's my two question for you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have no information about a survey that's been done before on this topic.
I think Mr. Testani had made a comment about how surveys, it's tough to survey the population because a lot of people won't respond to the surveys. And we kind of saw that in the COVID, with the COVID, when we were deciding on the mask policy, we sent out surveys. And it was like 4% of people responded, that we surveyed. So our district, unfortunately, isn't super responsive to surveying.
Yeah, and also,
So, Mr. Lamar, sorry to interrupt you, but for me, it's most important to have a survey. We have it there. Nobody can say we trying to reach parents and staff. I know the last survey went very well because I know Mr. Testani, they said a percent how many parents, respond back. But it's very important that parents, we send the survey. I don't know how they're going to do it, the protocol, the policy, but it's much better, because I want the parent to be involved in this, and especially the staff. So we had to include them. That's my opinion. No more comment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, I'm gonna go backwards. I'm gonna start with Mr. Benahan's comment about the surveys. The survey might not have any value because we can't specifically ask about people's religion on the survey. I think the lawyer made that pretty clear that it's a illegal question. It's the census data doesn't even ask people what religion do you practice. So that would be problematic. So we would get some answers, yeah, but I don't know how. There it is. And okay, second point, getting rid of all the holidays except for the federal holidays automatically protects the Christian holiday of Christmas. And
no,
it's
Christmas
a holiday.
Christmas is part of the
Winter break.
winter break, which we are required by law to observe. So it's part of a 2-week period,
Okay, right. I'll accept that. I'll accept that point.
but that's out of consideration.
As far as you're concerned, you do have a valid concern about having 181 other days of the year and summer getting out. How about if we set a parameter where, instead of this year, the last day of school was June 23rd, that the absolute last day of school will be June 24th? And we can't move past that. And this way, if somebody does fill it up, we got the parameter, well, that would put us past the 25th of June, which is against our current bylaws. And that will give us a non-secular reason to deny a holiday. I'm really reluctant to take away holidays and to look at the current minority religions, which may be less populous than the upcoming majority religions, because that defeats the whole purpose of why we started this exercise, is to help out the marginalized people who weren't being recognized. If we hit one marginalized group at the expense of another marginalized group, kind of defeating the purpose.
I'm not talking about getting rid of anything, but I think it would be a smart thing to recast the calendar for that one time only, and then have the administration provide data that would help to determine whether it's even worth closing schools for an entire day. Because you might find that because of the way things have changed for years, people come in just like they normally would. And that there's no need to close schools for any reason. And then that would buy you, if everybody agreed that, yeah, there's no point in doing this. That could get you a week earlier dismissal or not. You might find something out that you didn't know. You might find that, yeah, you know what, still on these various holidays, absenteeism jumps by a certain percentage
And
from what is standard, from what is average. You find it jumps by 2-3 percentage points, and you attribute that to people observing a holiday. So then at that point, it becomes real. It becomes based on current data, not on information that's 60 or 70 years old. And probably that could be a part of your policy, that like every 10 years, we will recast the calendar for the purpose of data collection to be able to adjust going forward for the next 10-year period. And then you won't find yourself in this position where, we're doing things because it's the way we did it 70 years ago. And nobody looked at it in the interim.
yeah, I get the point, and I disagree, but I just want to ask one question through you, Mr. Chair. How would you deal with the collective bargaining units on those days? I mean, this is something that would have to be bargained into the contract for them to work, especially our non-certified staff who have all these days written into their, such as like, and what is this, how many days?
It's basically the same ones.
These are not subject to collective bargaining, by the way.
Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving. Okay, for instance, the day after Thanksgiving, I don't believe is a federal holiday. Veterans Day is Columbus Day still a federal holiday? Yep, federal holiday. Okay. Yep. Labor Day and then Juneteenth, Memorial Day. And I think the city doesn't get any of the Jewish holidays.
This is it.
And then also we'd have to hit up the day before Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving. Those two aren't federal holidays. That's two right there. Good Friday, which is on. Is Good Friday on the calendar for the? I mean, the non-certified staff. Yes, it's okay. Yeah, so we would have
It's on a Friday.
right. So we're talking about four holidays. The collective bargaining units would have to have.
No, that's what I'm telling you. The holidays, we dictate what days schools are open or closed.
Correct, but we don't.
We don't bargain with the unions about whether or not that occurs. That's solely within our purview. It's not a negotiable item.
But yeah, but if we have the building open on Wednesday before Thanksgiving and a Friday after Thanksgiving, that's currently in the contract for the janitors and security and
Not having.
and that was some of the problems we had when we were talking about taking off the day before Thanksgiving because they had just recently bargained to swap that out for Veterans Day.
He didn't. I think he made like a gentleman's agreement, but our attorney told us holidays and days off are not bargainable. We set our calendar. We don't have to negotiate with the union about what holidays are observed or not.
I think,
If you want to double check that, you can, but
I think the practical side though, if those staff members don't come.
they should be talked to. What do you think about this? I don't,
They'd have to be on board.
yeah.
But yeah, I think definitely something we got to definitely follow up on before.
So, I mean, I think that there's certain things that we, I think, all agree to, and documenting it. I think that we can use the things that we are all sort of in agreement with to start building the policy. So some suggestions might include as Joe recommended, which I like this idea, that the absolute last day of school must be, rather than saying June 24th, maybe we say the third or fourth Friday of June. Because obviously that third or fourth Friday is going to vary from year to year. So if the policy said, you know, let's say the third Friday of June must be the absolute last day of school. And that holds as policy as being the last day of school for every year going forward. Another could be students must be in school for 181 days, whatever the state says. And that's per state statute, but we'll articulate that in the policy so that it's clear to whoever's looking, whoever's inquiring that we're also abiding by state statutes. So that could be in the policy. We could articulate the Levin test so that it must have a secular legislative purpose, and list out some of the recommendations that were included here in the roadmap, such as the promotion of inclusiveness of members of minority groups and advancing the district's commitment to educational equity, difficulty of advancing the curriculum when a meaningful number of students would be absent. So these are things that we could include in the policy so that if anyone is wanting to advocate for a particular day, they can use these points to determine, or rather that the district can use these points to determine whether or not a holiday qualifies as being eligible to be added to the calendar for the future. I think in our current position, we have the 2022-23 calendar is already established, correct?
Mhm.
Then the 2023-24 calendar is when we're adding Eid. Is that correct? Is that calendar still open to?
It hasn't been approved.
It has not been approved.
Right. The calendars get presented like a year and a half before their
Yeah.
cycle.
Okay.
So that would be presented in January.
So the reasons why we're having such a hard time, sort of developing the policy is because we haven't had consistency in years past with how we're reporting absenteeism or the purpose of being absent. We don't have those data points to be able to add. So I'm wondering if over the next year, we can maybe start with creating like an absentee reporting policy whereby we'll be able to collect data and have that ready for when we meet for the 23-24 calendar.
I like that.
So how do you capture data if we already have certain holidays off?
Well, so the 22-23 calendar is already approved, right? So no one's touching that calendar. But during that year of 22 to 23, maybe we start with implementing a data collection policy instead, so by the time the next calendar comes around, which would be what, January of next year?
Yeah.
So then
6 months from now.
Yeah, so then we're not going to be able to start implementing policy based on data until the 24-25 school year.
So in other words, you're thinking of other holidays, tracking those, like
Yeah.
Diwali or something like that.
Yeah.
See the attendance rate. So what would the tracking, saying something categorizing why they're out, or just?
Yeah, I guess that's what needs to be what needs to be figured out is, and I think Tessani is really the best person to weigh in on this. The lawyer kept hammering away with, the best way for us to substantiate our policy decisions is to have data. And the frustrating thing about that was we can all agree, right, that sure, we would love to make our policy decisions based on data if we had it. We don't have it. So at what point are we going to start collecting it?
And that's why I was suggesting to have a one-time recasting of the calendar. Put it back to bare basics, just the federals.
Mhm.
Collect your data
Mhm.
and then look at it and decide, is there anything significant going on certain days that warrants keeping certain holidays? But if we don't do that, we're still flying blind with respect to, the ones that we already have.
Mhm. So,
And you do it with that one time and then that's it.
Uh-huh.
And then the ensuing year's calendar is based on the information you collected at the recast.
mhm.
And you make it a practice to do it at some kind of regular interval.
What year would you suggest that recast occur?
To do it this year might be a little last minute.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters as long as you pick one and use it, really use it, you
Mhm.
know?
If we were to,
And then, like I said, that's part of the policy. Every 10 years, we will do this.
but if we were to recast for this year,
Really, the only,
coupled with that, hi, Bobby.
sure.
Okay. Coupled with recasting the calendar, what's the effort to collect the data to justify adding?
Well, that's, now you're collecting, you're looking at all potential holidays,
Uh,
Diwali, whatever. And seeing, are there any influxes that make you believe that folks are taking this day off for that purpose? So it's not just the holidays that we currently have, but it's any other potential holiday. There could be some budding, Indian population we're unaware of. And some data point shows us that, Indian students are starting to take this day off. This is starting to impact the overall attendance rate. And you're only going to have that if you just basically press pause, take a look at your data points. And if there isn't a significant increase in a particular holiday, it doesn't get dealt with. But when something presents itself, now you've got something to talk about.
When you recast the calendar, which holidays do you preserve? None? Or just federal?
Just the federal. You could even get rid of the federal, because the only requirement if you do that is that you hold a program of study relating to that holiday. So if you have kids come in on Veterans Day, you have a program about veterans.
Do we do that currently?
I don't know.
I think you
So,
should.
I don't think they do, because that's the only federal holiday that got moved.
Yeah.
I don't think he was aware of that.
Yep.
But that was part of what Bertram Moses said, is that you could get rid of President's Day, but you'd have to teach something about the president's day.
Mhm.
So you could say, we'll recast everything. Our kids taking off Veterans Day. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're not. Maybe enough of their parents work where, they would come to school. You would see that. And then you would be able to see which federal holidays warranted people staying home or keeping the school open and teaching a program
Right.
about Christopher Columbus or that's a hot topic, but about,
Yeah.
the explorers,
Right.
say, like I don't get Columbus Day off, and a lot of people don't,
Mhm.
but we close schools for that day. So you can look at all of it.
Mr. Collins?
Yes. I'm really concerned about this proposal, unless, of course, we shift the winter break from Christmas week. We close for all holidays. Everybody comes to holidays, and we're not just tracking the minority holidays to see who takes off. We also track who takes off for the Christian holidays. Because otherwise, we're only picking on minority groups.
Yeah, we check everything.
Yeah, I'm saying check everything. we're not allowed to touch winter break.
So you still have the
That's just,
January 5th to January 18th, just so we're not favoring the Christians and having their holiday still protected and surrounded by winter break. Because we need the data to see who's celebrating the holidays, right?
I recall them saying that particular week, though, is
that particular week or 2 week period between like December 21st and January 3rd or something that's set in stone for whatever reason.
I think it's mandated by the state,
Yeah,
like how the 180 days is mandated by the state,
right. Yeah, it's,
was my understanding.
yes.
Um,
And I was never aware of that. That was new.
I thought it was better.
we're all learning.
And additionally, I did find the holidays for the city. It's 34.1 in their contract. This is a little old contract because it's not updated for day before Thanksgiving. All employees of the city of Bridgeport shall be paid and have the following days off: New Year's Day, Martin Luther King, President's Day, Good Friday, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Columbus Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, and any holiday officially proclaimed as such by the mayor of the city. So the mayor could just declare a holiday, and the city workers, MAGE and the other bargaining unit could get the holiday off as well.
Right, which is what happened in the case of Juneteenth.
Correct. So then it became a federal holiday as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, so let me
Okay,
get back to my,
So,
Go ahead.
so where are we? I'm
we're
just
still,
asking, where are we?
We're discussing.
Yeah, we're still just,
We're not on any one to land on anything yet. I think that if there were to be some type of, what'd you call it? Not a reset, you call it something else.
recast,
Recast.
like a pause.
I would think that, you know, these city holidays, aside from Good Friday, pretty, you know, and I don't think of Thanksgiving at this point is looked at as a religious holiday anymore. You know, we could keep those days. Just be Good Friday, and then there's Three Kings Day. There's the Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, El Fitr. Those would be the days.
And the federal, because there are,
Right, we'll
I
keep,
think some federals are
I think we should keep all of them.
like sacred, you know, like Labor Day.
which day?
Labor Day,
Oh, Labor Day.
Memorial Day, but Veterans Day, President's Day. Yeah, I don't know.
That's it.
Those are a couple of holidays that some people get it off, some don't.
Well, the other thing is, if we did anything like this and then collected data, you'd want to set what you're looking for, your benchmarks.
Sure.
You know,
And I don't say that it needs,
religious holidays.
and I don't say it needs to be anything major, but you know, like you could find what your average absentee rate is, percentage standpoint, both at the staff level and at the student level. And if, let's say the average absentee rate, the student body is 7%. On any given day, on average, 7% of kids aren't going to show. So now that becomes your starting point. And if you see that on certain holidays, that rises from 7 to 10%. Well, that's a significant rise from the average. I don't think it should be looked at as much day over day, because we saw some pretty wide swings in attendance going from 1,500 to 2,000 to back to 15. But if you come up with an average and that's your baseline, and you determine that anything beyond 2% or 3% above that average, that's useful.
I think you'd also, in this experiment, you'd also have to make it very clear that anyone who observes any religious holiday has an excused absence for that day. So they know they're okay to take.
Yes, they do.
You know, that have to be communicated.
Here's the other things that they get up to 10 excused absences per year, students.
So was that, will the record reflect that Board Member Bobby Brown has entered the meeting?
Huh?
Mr. Benahan?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I have a question for you, and please answer me this because I feel a little. I understand a little lost, but I feel like I'm going circle and circle. I asked you this question in the beginning. I know you answered me about the survey. What's the different years back the holidays that we talking about holidays now and change it? And we have to know that putting it on the calendar, not put in the calendar, make it official, or make it official. People, when they got holidays, they will take the holidays. Doesn't matter what happened, what's going on, where they come from, what language, what country, they will take it. But my question for you, Mr. Chair, and I hope you can answer me. You can answer me this. What's the difference between years back the calendar that now we got different things? Now we trying because I don't feel like we be in the circus. I just want to go to the clear about the difference about calendars years back and now, please.
Well, I can only give you my perspective, and I open it up to anyone else here to give theirs as well. But I think for the longest time, the holidays have been pretty static. They've been the majority religions had their holidays. There were not requests for others. And so this is basically kind of a new phenomenon. And therefore, with the possibility, and as Mr. Segalovic mentioned, it may not happen for 20 more years, but with the possibility that more requests from more minority groups come forward and the need to make adjustments to the calendar as they may happen, and acknowledging that there's only a limited number of days that are available to offer, the difference in why this conversation is happening is to try to be proactive so that if it comes to the point where we have to say, no, we have guidelines and reasons why we make our decisions. Because there may be a point where there's one day left and 3 groups come to the table asking for it. This is a hypothetical. And then we would have to, at that point, have something to base our decision on why we give that day to that one group and say no to the other 2. So it's just trying to be proactive. I think that's the difference. Anyone else has anything they want to say? Feel free to say.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your information. Thank you.
Welcome. So at this point, does anyone else have anything they want to throw in? We had some good ideas come up, possibilities. I still think what definitely is still a very viable option is the no option. Is to not do anything. I think that's still very much because no one thing has really been strong yet, but there's definitely more discussion to have, looking into what the data collection would look like, how that would work, how this would work with the other constituents involved as far as their holiday schedule, whether or not we would take off federal days. So there's a lot to still talk about. Do you have any last comments from anyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that we have to table sorry. Can I finish?
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, of course.
Okay, I was saying, I think we would have to table the conversation about what data we need or what we're, looking for until Testani's present to be able to weigh in on that. So that's one thing. The other thing is, that, there's other things that I feel comfortable putting into policy, but I do think that it's because it's an evolving conversation. We should probably table that also.
Table what?
Like the other things that we could put into policy, which is, that the students have to be here for 180 plus days, or if they are taking a day off, that's not, that's not being observed, that it be excused, or, which I'm sure is maybe already school policy, but anyway, that the absolute last day of school must be on this day. Or what? Did I hit you with it? Did I hit you with my hair? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's a habit. Yeah. And anyway, so those points, I think we should hold off on also. If we do reset the calendar, are we only observing federal holidays? Those types of things.
What data are we collecting, or only some of the federals?
Right.
Because like I said, there's some federals that, like Columbus Day, a lot of people go to work.
Right.
So would you throw that to the mix? But something like Thanksgiving, you're just not going to look at that because you already know. So it could be some mixture.
So I think what we could try to do, especially if Mr. Testani is here on August 15th, is put something together.
Yeah,
You know, let's
Okay.
put something together. That would be the goal of the meeting, just to have something to look at, to toss around, and we'll walk away with something in that meeting. And then the next one would be when the school year starts.
okay.
You can share, you're taking a lot of notes, share it.
Yeah, I
Right.
will. I will do that. I'll share these notes with you and then you can put together,
Yeah.
something for us to look at,
Okay, yep,
to really chew on.
all right. So, Mr. Macaron, you have something you want to add?
Oh, no, thank you. I'm fine with this.
All right, thank you. I have a motion to adjourn.
So before you do that, just from a technical standpoint, do Mike and Albert need to get out of this and come into a new? They do. Okay.
Yes.
Again, is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Oh,
moved.
boy.
For a second? Mike, you want a second?
You can second.
I second.
Second,
Okay.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your input.
All right, thank you.
God bless you all.
Thank you.